Kia ora te marina, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Hui e, taiki e. Great. I'll hand it back over to you, Josie, if you'd like to introduce us now.
Certainly. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And before I get going, and I'd say I'm super excited about today's topic. I'm kind of fizzing with energy, so hopefully you are as well. I do want to thank you all for making the time to be here, whether you're listening live or if you're watching on a recording. I know how busy life can get, so the fact that you're showing up, you're watching this, really speaks volumes around your commitment to your own personal development, which ties in so nicely with our topic today on goal setting. I also want to do a big shout out to the Ignite team. They are amazing. And I think this must be my third or fourth webinar that I've done for Ignite. And what I really love about the Ignite team is they really consider what topics are most valuable for their customers. And, I'll talk more about that in a moment, but I know that this has been one that's been, a long time in the works. A lot of thought has gone into this topic because the Ignite team knows how important goal setting is for you all. So a big thank you, a shout out to the Ignite team for bringing us together and for making this happen. So a little bit about me, first of all. Kia, ko Josie Aho, and I've got it there that I'm proudly a habits geek. I am so passionate about behaviour change, which is all about habits. It's helping us to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And I like to do this in a way that feels sustainable, in a way that is life-proof, so that even when life gets busy, you can still be that best version of yourself that you want to be, however you define that version. What I do is, as Marissa said, I am a coach with Ignite. I also have my private practice called Spring Coaching, and I work with individuals and teams to help them perform their best consistently. Because what I often find with really ambitious, driven people is that we're really great at pushing ourselves. We're really great at pushing ourselves to be at the top of our game, but the way that we do that isn't always sustainable, and often what can happen is we end up burning out and actually feeling worse for our efforts. So I like to help people to avoid that burnout that often follows. And I do this, as I said, through kind of the daily habits, the little things that we do each and every day. Now, I have a background in science. I've got a psychology degree, and the reason why I love science, and probably one of my points of difference, is that when I share information, I like to make sure that the stuff that I'm sharing actually works, that it makes a difference. I was that 2-year-old that was always asking the why questions, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Why? Because I love to understand things. And so you'll find a lot of the time when I'm presenting or doing these webinars that I'll be sharing some research with you. So if I ever cover any research that you want to know more about, please feel free to send me an email. I've got a little bit of a library of it and I can send it through to you. Before setting up my business, Spring Coaching, I spent about 20 years working in strategy planning performance. So I've spent a lot of time in the corporate world, and I understand the pressures and the deadlines that come from just being really busy and trying to make everything fit together. Now, my interest in actually high performance and behavior change comes from my private life, where I'm a long distance runner. And unfortunately for me, I learned a very hard lesson on the importance of prioritizing rest and recovery. And in my case, it actually led to me spending several months on crutches due to a very bad injury. And that's why I love doing what I do. I love helping other people avoid that burnout at the end. And I live in Tawatahi in Carterton in beautiful Wairarapa with my husband and my dog. And it's become a little bit of a tradition now, I think, of the last few sessions to always share a photo of my dog. And I do this because he's just so goofy looking. He always makes me smile. And so this photo, I actually took of him yesterday. This is a momentous day for him because he recently had surgery on his right leg. You might see that that bit of the leg is shaved. And he's just had his stitches removed, which meant he was able to go out and play with Squeaky, the green bow, and his chicken again. And you can just see the joy in his eyes. So I wanted to share that photo with you all. So again, a shout out to Ignite. So today's session has been one that's been in the works for a while. And then I was having a talk with the Ignite team and they said, how about we make it into a trilogy? Because setting a goal is one thing, but actually doing the actions for the goals is another, and then doing them consistently is a whole different ballgame. So Today, what we're going to be talking about is how to set goals that stick, how to set goals with clarity and purpose so that the goals that you're setting are meaningful for you. So think about this like the direction. In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to get back together and we're going to talk about how to actually do the actions that you've set yourselves, how to build the systems so that you can actually deliver your goals. And I've got this idea there of system eats goals for breakfast, because you can have the goal, say, for example, of cleaning your bedroom, and you can clean your bedroom once, but if you don't have the system in place to keep your bedroom clean, you're going to have to keep cleaning your bedroom. And so that second session is all about how to build the system so that you can keep on achieving and delivering that thing. And then we'll meet again to talk about how to keep doing the thing, because life will get busy, and when the going gets tough, often that's when the motivation dwindles. So our final session on February 27th is going to be how to keep going. So the practical ways to stay consistent, adapt, and to keep progressing. So today's all about direction, then it's how to do it and how to keep doing it. Now, the good thing is I am intentionally going to make it so each webinar stands alone by itself, but I also encourage you, if you can, to tune along into each webinar as we go, or else catch up on the recordings. So hopefully that all sounds good. So let's dive into what we're going to cover today. So what we're going to talk about today is why goals matter in the first place. Why are we all here? Why do we care about goal setting? Then we're going to talk about why is it that goals are so hard to achieve. And I've got a little bit of a hint there. It's all in the definition that I'm going to share with you of what a goal actually is. Then we're going to get a little bit sciencey and geeky. I hope that's okay with you all. And we're going to talk about the essentials of behavior change, because that's what goals is all about. You need to change your behavior to achieve a goal. That will then take us into the 2 ingredients that every goal needs to have in order to be successful. And then from there, we'll talk about how to select a goal, because, I'll touch on this later, but a lot of people know that they want to set a goal, but they don't know what goal to set. It's a very common thing. So we'll talk about how to set a goal. And then I'm going to share the 5 biggest goal setting mistakes that we all make. I make them, my clients make, you may make them as well. So we'll cover those off as well. And then finally, we'll talk about the power of action. So hopefully that all sounds good to you. But what I will say, and this is for every webinar or every training session that you do, is that when you come to these sessions, you come with an open mind. So I might share some information that you've heard before, but there's a big difference between knowing stuff and actually implementing stuff. And a little bit like with our trilogy of goal setting, there's a big difference between knowing, doing, and then doing consistently. And also I might share some things with you that feels a little bit challenging. And that's okay. Challenge and when we're uncomfortable is when we grow. So I encourage you to come with an open mind. I also encourage you to engage. So as we've already talked about, there's the Q&A function there. But in a moment, I'm also going to have some pop quiz questions for you. They're meant to be fun, so don't get too nervous about those. But I'm going to ask you to engage with me via the reaction buttons. So hopefully you know where those are. They're just down the bottom of the screen. If you move your cursor, you'll hopefully see like little reactions and a little smiley face. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to take action. I want you to go from today's session having information that's not just interesting. I'm hopeful that today's session will be interesting, but I also want it to be useful for you. So I want you to take action from today's session. And that does mean that as we work through today's webinar, I am going to pause and ask you to consider some questions. And hopefully you've got pen and paper there or something that you can write on or type on so that you can participate in those activities. I do know that when there's a pause, particularly in an online session, it's going to feel really awkward and uncomfortable. Please bear with me. I promise I won't make you hang out there for too long. But again, if you're writing something or engaging, the time's going to go so much quicker. So what I'm saying is to take a bet on yourself. So be open-minded, engage, and to take action. So the 3 little criteria. So here's this pop quiz that I mentioned. So what I want you to do is to think about, what do you think is the most common New Year's resolution? Now, if you think it is improve work-life balance, hopefully you can see a little heart emoji with your reactions. If you think it's improve fitness, oh yay, people are already going, this is awesome. You'll do the little clappy one. If you think it's improve finance, you're going to do the little ta-da, the trumpet. Awesome. This is cool. Thank you so much for taking part. I'm going to give us a couple more seconds for those that are still thinking about this. I'm seeing a lot of improved fitnesses. A couple of the trumpets, I saw improved work-life balance as well. Yep, fantastic. Okay, so drum roll. Here is a chart that I got from Forbes Health. So this is based on 1,000 US adults in 2024. And you can see that at the top, improved fitness. So all those that say clap, well done. Closely behind is actually improved finances at 38%. And what I think is really interesting is that when you look at those top clusters, they are all about health and well-being. So health and well-being are the most common New Year's resolutions to have. Improved work-life balance was also really important, but that was further down the list at 7%. Fantastic. So you all did awesome. I have another one for you, and I'm a little bit nervous about this one because when I saw the results for this, it was actually different to what I expected, but I'll explain in a second. How long do you think the average New Year's resolution lasts? If you think it's less than 1 month, do the love heart reaction. If you think it's about 3 months, you're going to do the claps. And if you think it's about 6 months, you're going to do the ta-da. So I'm seeing quite a few of the less than 1 months, about 3 months. I haven't seen any ta-das yet with the trumpet. Ooh, what else? Okay. Oh, more. Okay, let me share the results with you. And as I said, this really surprised me. So on average, and this is according to the same research, so from Forbes Health, based on those 1,000 US adults, the most common, so on average, a New Year's resolution lasts for 3.74 months, and only 6% stick with it. Now, this was way longer than I thought it would be, because you may have heard of this thing called Quitters Day, which is the second Friday in January. And there's lots of research out there that says that this is when the majority of people quit their New Year's resolutions. So I was expecting when I looked at this that there'd be more people there. So me being me, I wanted to dig in deeper to see what was going on. And I found out that the research that talks about Quitters Day often comes from fitness apps. So I'm wondering if the research about, most people quitting within like less than a month is actually those that have done fitness related goals using their fitness app. So it goes to show that the source of the data is really important when you're looking at research. But what is consistent across all research is that there's always a very small proportion, in this case 6%, and another one I saw 8%, that stick with these New Year's resolutions by the end of the year, that they keep going. So again, it's very telling, isn't it? So if so many of us set goals, but we often don't manage to see them through, why set goals in the first place? Because I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've set a goal and you are one of those people that quits within the first month. I know that's happened to me. It is really, really, you feel a little bit like a failure. Kind of sucks. It doesn't feel so good. So then why would you set a goal in the first place? Well, the reason why we set goals is that there's lots of research that says that goals make you happier. There's even research out there from the University of Wisconsin that says that setting goals helps suppress negative emotions, including feelings of fear and depression. So there's science that backs up that setting goals and striving towards goals is good for us because it gives your life purpose and meaning, which is especially good if you ever find yourself in a bit of a rut. Maybe it's a quarter life or midlife crisis, and life feels a little bit same or ho-hum. Setting goals is the thing that kind of puts a little spring into your step. It gets you out of bed and going in the morning. And I'll also add that although it can be hard to do the thing that's connected to the goal, having goals actually makes life feel easier. And the best way I can think to explain this is if you think about having a map where you have a destination in mind. When you have a destination in mind and you have a map, it makes it really easy to know which road to take. Wherefore, when you don't have that destination in mind and you don't have a map, you can kind of get a little bit lost. You can take kind of detours and not end up where you want to go. So when you have goals, it means that when you come to decision-making points in your life, it's easier to make those decisions. And it also means that you're committing to your own growth, which again, kudos to you all for showing up today. So in a nutshell, having a goal matters. Now, there's so many definitions of goals out there, but I really like this definition from Dr. Elliot Berkman. He's a professor at the University of Oregon, and he's basically a guru when it comes to neuroscience and behavior change and things like that. And he says, a goal is any desired outcome that wouldn't otherwise happen without some kind of intervention. So I'm going to repeat that one more time, and then we're going to break it down. So a goal is any desired outcome that wouldn't otherwise happen without some kind of intervention. So the first part, that makes sense, desired outcome. That's what goals are all about. But it's the second part, without some kind of intervention. So what this is saying is that in order for something to be a goal, you need to do something different. You need to actually do something that you wouldn't usually do. And that element is what creates the friction, the tension that makes goal setting achievement so challenging, because you have to do something different. So the very definition of a goal is what makes it hard. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, there's so much interesting research about this, and I'm going to share some of it with you. For those that like to dig in deep into research, this is the research of Dr. Elliot Berkman. If you want to have a look, the QR code will take you there, but you can also just Google the neuroscience of goals and behavior change. I'm only going to give you a very high level summary today, but as I said, if you want to dig deep, by all means go for it. So what Dr. Elliot Berkman talks about is how there is two components to behavior change. There are two things that need to happen. First of all, you need to have the skill, the knowledge, or the ability to do the action. But you also need to be motivated. And so he's plotted them on this axis. So for example, something that requires a lot of skill, but probably not much motivation because you do it all the time, would be something like driving to a familiar place. Therefore, something that requires a lot of skill and also a lot of motivation would be navigating when you touch down in a new city and trying to find your way to your Airbnb or your hotel. Right down to something simple and routine that doesn't require much skill and it doesn't require much motivation. So something like checking the mailbox daily, through to something that is simple, but it becomes more challenging. For example, checking the mailbox when you're waiting for your exam results. So that's the idea. And in order for a behavior change to happen, you have to move along at least one of those axes. So you either need to increase the level of skill required or the level of motivation required, because you have to do something different. Otherwise, it's not a goal. So with that in mind, and if you think about what a goal is, a goal requires behavior change. That means that every goal must have two things to avoid falling flat. Now, the reason why I've got a picture of bread there, a little fun fact about me, is that I love baking bread. And I learnt the hard way that in order to bake bread, you also need two key ingredients. I mean, in addition to things like flour, but what you really need is obviously the yeast, so the bread rises, but you also need salt. And it's interesting, salt's not just there for the taste. Salt is the thing that helps the bread stay firm and strong and sturdy. It gives structure to the bread as well. And goals are the same. You need two key ingredients, otherwise your goals will fall flat, like my bread did when I didn't realize that you actually do need to add salt. So the two things that goals need is they need the will. This is the why, kind of the emotional aspect for behavior change. And they need the way. This is how you're actually going to do it. And so if I bring up, so the will gets you going, and the way is the path you're going to take. So if we go back to that behavior framework, you'll see the will down the bottom is the why for behavior change, and the way is the how of behavior change, the skills, the ability, and the knowledge that you need to have. So we're going to talk about each of those in a little bit detail before we move on. So the will is your why for behavior change. This is your motivation, which is the strength of the desire to achieve the outcome regardless of how pleasant or unpleasant the action may be. It's the emotional aspect of behaviour change. It's important to know that the part of the brain that controls the emotional aspect of behaviour change, the motivation, the will or the why, is different to the part of the brain that's around the executive function required for the way or the how you're going to make that change happen. So the will is your why. So some ways to uncover the will, your why, is to answer these questions. Why is this behaviour change important to you? Why do you want to change? And why now? And you may also be familiar with the 5 why technique, where you ask the question why 5 times. That also helps you uncover the will behind the goal. And I love this quote: when you find your why, you don't hit snooze no more, because you find a way to make it happen. Now, the other essential ingredient is the way. It's the how you're actually going to do it. So this is the executive function part of the brain. It's the doing part. This is where you need the skills, the knowledge, and abilities that you need to actually execute that goal. And it's a cognitive aspect of behaviour change. So some things you might like to think about with this is, how is the behaviour change actually going to occur? What skills and capacity does it require? And what is the specific plan for getting this done? Because without a plan, goals are just dreams. Goals are just dreams with a deadline. Without a plan, they remain wishes. So we're going to move into some doing now. So this QR code will take you to a template, a tool that I use with my clients. You can download it here. Otherwise, you can just use the questions on the screen, up to you. Because what I'm going to get you to do now is to start to think about how to put this into action and how to create a goal for yourself that you can then further refine during today's webinar. But first, as I said, a very common question that I get asked, particularly amongst my clients who are very smart, successful people, they'll say, how can I set a goal if I don't know what my goals are? And I'd say there's 2 groups of people that find this particularly challenging. There's the person that is so used to putting other people's needs ahead of their own that they find it hard to think about what they actually want. The second group of people that I find, have a lot of challenge with this are perfectionists, because when they set a goal, they want to achieve it 100%. And so they can get caught up trying to define the perfect goal rather than just settling with the goal and accepting progress. So if this sounds like you, here are some tips to help you set a goal. And the first thing I'd say, and this may sound a little bit contradictory to what I was saying about goals versus dreams, but it's to allow yourself to dream. Because it's your goals that feed into your dreams. So think of your big picture thing, what you want to be like, what you want to achieve, and then pick goals that align with those. So give yourself permission to dream. Now this next one, and I apologize, it's a little bit doom and gloom, and it's a little bit kind of awkward and uncomfy. But eventually, hopefully many years from now, things will end. And when that happens, many years away, what do you think you wish you had done? So start at the end and work your way forwards, and that can help you work out what it is that you want to achieve, and then from there you can pick some goals from there. I'd also encourage you, and this one is tough, particularly for people like me with a really busy brain, is to slow down, be present, and listen. Because I'd certainly say that within my coaching practice, I often find that most of us know exactly what it is that we want to do, or what it is that we want to achieve, but we don't have the time to actually stop and listen. So I'd encourage you to try and find that time and space to do that. And there is some studies that say that people who regularly practice mindfulness are actually better at setting and achieving goals because they're more comfortable at being still and tuning into that inner voice. So maybe one of your goals could be around practicing mindfulness. So then it gets easier to set goals. And that last one that I've got there, it's a little bit kooky. And I got this from Mel Robbins. And there's a study that she found, I think it was from Cornell University actually, that says that if you speak in the third person when you're setting goals, that they are more likely to be successful. So for example, Josie will record a webinar for Ignite, that sort of thing. When you say it, it has more authority, more meaning, so it's more likely to be successful. But the key thing is to make sure that when you set a goal, this goal aligns with what you want, not what your mum, your dad, your wife, your husband, your neighbor's dog, something that you want, something for you. And this is called a self-congruent goal. So your turn. This is where we are going to pause for 30 seconds. And I know it might feel a little bit awkward, particularly being online, but I want you to think about what is something you would like to achieve. Have a think about those two elements that we talked about, that you need to have the will, the why you want to do this. Why is this important to you? And this might be where you use that template that I sent through to you. But also have to think about the way. How will you do this thing? What are the steps that you need to take? You don't have to have it perfect just yet. Don't be one of those people that gets caught up in trying to make it perfect. It's just something that we can work on through the rest of the webinar. So we're looking for just anything, not perfection, just anything. So I'm going to set a timer and we'll kind of come back in about 20 seconds. Okay, so coming back, hopefully you're able to use that opportunity to write something down. And as I said, I know it always feels so long when you're online, so well done for bearing with it. We're going to keep moving on now. So we've talked about the 2 essential ingredients that you need for any goal. We're now going to dive into the 5 most common mistakes that people make. So mistake number 1, and this is very common, particularly amongst planners like me. My background before I set up my business was in planning, so I love to plan, is only focusing on the way. So forgetting about why the thing is important. So you spend all this time kind of analysing the goal, breaking it down into little steps, thinking about how you're actually going to do it, that you lose the whole why behind it. So this is jumping into solutions without knowing your personal why. It's allowing others to influence your goals, and this will typically and naturally lead to resistance and avoidance. No one likes being told what to do. It's one of the reasons why I love coaching. As a coach, I don't tell anyone what to do. I help people work things out for themselves, because as soon as someone tells you what to do, there's like this little inner teenage rebel in you that comes out and thinks, no, you can't make me. So make sure that your goal is something that you want, not something that you think you oughta, coulda, shoulda do, but something that you truly, truly want. Because without a meaningful reason, that motivation is going to fade fast, and you're probably going to feel quite resentful every time you do that thing that you need to do for your goal. So anchor your goal into what truly matters to you. Why is this important to you? And again, this could be a good opportunity to do that 5 why exercise. If you're not familiar with the exercise, please just send me an email. I've got a little talk sheet that I can send through to you. Mistake number 2. This is probably the one that I see the most amongst my clients, and that's because, well, my clients are amazing. They are, and they just want to do everything straight away. They want to achieve and do, and they've got drive and they've got ambition, and they just want to have millions of goals because they can do it all. But of course, research time and time again says you're actually better to focus on just one thing at a time. So mistake number 2 is setting too many goals, because the more goals you have, it means you're spreading your energy across different priorities, which dilutes your progress. By selecting only one, or if you must, up to 3 goals, it helps to accelerate achievement. So I'd encourage you to pick one, but I do know that some people like to have different goals for different aspects of their life. So I'd say up to 3, but certainly less is more here. And what I encourage you to do if you are going to select multiple goals is to focus on your first goal first and then move on to the next one. So less is more, and there is a fantastic book called Less is More, which is all about this concept. The less that you are focusing on, the quicker you will achieve. Mistake number 3 is all about missing the sweet spot. So if we think about goals and that definition of goals, you have to do something different. That means that there has to be an element of challenge there, but it can't be too challenging, otherwise you feel like giving up straight away. So it's a little bit like Goldilocks and Three Bears. You try and find that just right spot, the sweet spot. So goals too easy, they don't inspire growth. Goals too hard can overwhelm with all momentum. So growth happens at the point of healthy resistance. Aim for challenging but achievable. And there's a couple of people that I really admire who are experts in this field, and they talk about aiming for what's just manageable. So that thing that just makes you uncomfortable, but you can still do it. That's kind of the level of challenge that you want for your goal. So you're finding the sweet spot. It's just like Goldilocks and Three Bears. Mistake number 4, setting wishy-washy goals, kind of like those vague goals, like that first goal that we had in that chart, which was improve fitness. That's a great thing to have, but how are you actually going to measure it? How are you going to know that you've been successful? So vague intentions like improve fitness, improve health, improve finances, improve work-life balance, they can't be measured. There's no way that you can say that you've achieved it. And this lack of clarity means that you never actually get there because there's no finishing line. So one of the ways that I overcome this is I ask myself, how will I know if I've succeeded? What does the finishing line here look like? Because if you can do that, then it means that your goal is specific. So define what success looks like in real observable terms. And you may be familiar with this concept of SMART goals, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That is what this is all about, making sure that they are specific, that you can measure them so you know what the finishing line looks like. So you can celebrate, because if you don't know what the finishing line looks like, how can you celebrate? Mistake number 5, and this feels a little bit contradictory to the one that I just said, but it's not providing any wiggle room. Now, I love this concept. This one was new to me, and this is also another one that I found from Mel Robbins. She found through some research, I think it was, I can't remember which university, but it was an American university, that according to research, it's easier to lose 2 to 4 pounds than 3 pounds. So I'm going to repeat that. It's easier to lose 2 to 4 pounds than 3 pounds. And I'll give you an example. Say if you've set yourself a goal of going to the gym, say 4 times a week, so it's nice and specific, and you've had one of those weeks and you wake up on a Friday morning and it's like you haven't been to the gym all week. Many people in this situation will be like, oh, I've failed already, what's the point in even trying? But if you had what's called a high and low range goal of say 3 to 5 times a week, which is still the same thing as 4 times, but 3 to 5 gives you wiggle room. That means that you could be motivated to crawl out of bed and go to the gym. And then if you go to the gym Friday, Saturday, Sunday, hey, you're succeeding. So rigid goals where you set just one number, say 4 times a week, they can feel fragile and all or nothing. They're not life-proof. Life will get busy. But giving yourself high-low ranges, like the 3 to 5, gives you more confidence, it gives you flexibility, it gives you more freedom to make your goals fit your life, which also creates attainability, but still that sense of challenge. So when setting goals, think about high to low ranges. So rather than just one finite number, a range, 3 to 5, 2 to 4, whatever feels right for you. So make them life-proof is the key message here. So I'm going to pause again. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is look at that first goal that you've written and just review it. Think about those 5 mistakes. Review your goal. Make sure it's important to you. Understand why it's important to you. Keep it simple. So I'm hoping you've only got one goal, maybe no more than 3. Check the sweet spot. Is it challenging but still achievable? Check. Is it specific? Can you visualize? Can you describe what success will look like at the end? And then, my favorite tip of all, give yourself a bit of wiggle room. Give yourself a little bit of freedom, a little bit of flexibility by using a high-low range goal. So I'm going to set another timer and give you this time just to have a look at your goal and refine it based on what we've learned. Welcome back. That 30 seconds actually went a lot faster than the first 30 seconds. So hopefully you've had an opportunity now to refine your goals. If not, don't worry, in a moment I will be sharing that QR code with you again so you can download that worksheet so you can work through it in your own time. But for now, I do want to share one last thing with you. And now this is the number one thing to do to increase success, to increase the likelihood that you'll achieve your goal, that you won't be one of those people that fits into Quitter's Day on that second Friday of the month. And this actually comes from cafe culture, and it comes from the University of Chicago. So you may know that often when you go into a cafe and you buy a coffee, they have those like loyalty cards. I'm a sucker for loyalty cards. And if you're not familiar with them, but you kind of go in, they give you a card, so you buy 10 coffees and then your 11th coffee is free. That sort of idea. So what they did is they had these two groups of people. For one group of people, they gave them a coffee card where it was buy 10, get the 11th free. For the second group, it was buy 12, get the 13th free. But the catch was, for the second group, the first two were stamped, so it looked like they had already made progress. And what they wanted to find out is how quickly did the two groups work through the coffee card to get their freebie. So same number of coffees had to be bought. You had to buy 10 coffees in order to get a freebie. But what they found was that those that had the two stamps already done, they felt like they were winning. So they moved through the coffee card quicker. So what this tells us is that in order to achieve your goal, the number one thing, the best thing for you to do is to tick off your milestone straight away. Take action. The second you've defined your goal, make action, make a start, make progress, because goals stall when you delay starting. And what I would encourage you to do is to make that first step, that first milestone, stupidly simple, quick, and easy, because success breeds success. We all like winning. There's nothing more motivating than progress and to feel like we're winning. So first, maybe even first couple of milestones, make them so easy that you feel like you're already making progress. That gives you the motivation, the activation energy to keep going. Action creates momentum. So I encourage you to start tiny and just start. Because as I say, there is nothing more motivating out there than progress. So just start, just pick something small, do it. Remember those coffee cards, when they were stamped off, those first two, they're more likely to take action. So your turn again. I'm going to encourage you to think about your goal, to pick one small step, and again, make it stupidly easy as you possibly can, that you're going to do right after this webinar. It might be as simple as downloading a worksheet that I'm about to share with you again. It could be even just telling someone that you respect what your goal is, because that will instantly increase the likelihood of you achieving your goal. It could be Googling the thing that you're interested in. Just something really, really small that's aligned with your goal that will get you moving, so you can tick and say, yes, I'm making progress. And connect it to your goal. How will this help you move forwards to your goal? So just in case you want your thing to be downloading that worksheet, here it is again for you. And I'll give you, say, another 20 seconds to think about something that will help you move forwards towards your goal. Fantastic. Hopefully you all have something that you've picked that you can now take action towards your goal the second we log off this webinar, like the second you log off this webinar. So let's go over the key messages from today's webinar and then we'll open it up for questions. So the first thing I wanted you to get out of today's session is that goals matter. Goals bring meaning, happiness, and ease to your life. They give your life a sense of purpose, and they also help to reduce negative feelings like fear and depression. But the nature of goals, the definition of goals, is that you need to take action. You need to do something different, and that's why goals are challenging. Every goal that you set has to have two key elements. You need to have a will, which is the why behind doing the goal, the emotional side of it, but it also needs to have a way, the how you're going to do it. That's the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities that you need to have to execute the goal. You need to make it personal, and this is so important. It needs to be something that matters to you, not anyone else. It's all about you. The goal has to be focused, specific, flexible, so a little bit of wiggle room to give it some life-proofness, and it needs to move you forwards. Plan realistically, but it's really important you allow yourself that wiggle room so you don't feel like you're going to fail straight away. And then don't wait, just start with your goal now. So just a quick reminder, this is the first in our trilogy around goal setting. So today's session was all about how to set the right goal to give yourself direction. In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to talk more about how to do it, how to build the systems to do the goal. And then we're going to talk about how to keep doing it, how to keep the momentum going when life gets busy, when the tough gets going. And I just love this quote from Mel Robbins. You are not starting at zero. You're already taking steps towards your goal. You have momentum, and I want you to keep going. I want that for you. So I'm going to close here, because if you have any questions, there'll be time for questions after this, but also you're welcome to email me or book in a session with me. I'd love to have a chat.
Yeah, Josie, thank you for that. That was really
Pleasure.
informative and great to have some solid resources to take away and proper like actual steps to take away from
Yes.
this. Thanks, guys. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to chuck them in the Q&A function along the bottom of the screen, or feel free to chuck it in the chat. I've just got a question while we're waiting for some more questions to come through.
Always have such great questions.
So how do you work towards a big future goal? Like, say you've got a goal of buying a house in 5 years without breaking it into so many smaller goals that it sort of becomes overwhelming? Because I know you mentioned about less is more. So how do you sort of break break down the big goals into like smaller goals without it becoming overwhelming?
Yeah, I love that question. It's a little bit like if you're facing a massive big staircase, right? Eventually you have to get to the top of the staircase, and it feels like such a long way, and walking upstairs is tough work. But if you think about, well, actually, I don't need to think about all the steps up. I just need to think about that first step. Then you take that first step and maybe celebrate for taking that first step, and then take the second, and then the next. So yes, less is more when it comes to goal setting. But the more little milestones, the more wins that you can build into that big goal, the easier it is. So don't be afraid to make your steps, those milestones, itty bitty. Again, the smaller they are, the better, because then you'll keep winning. And when you win, you feel like a winner. And it's like, hey, I'm amazing. I'm just going to keep doing this because I've made so much progress. Look at how far I'm gone. I'm already 5 flights up. That sort of mentality.
Yeah, gotcha. Great, thank you. How do you tell whether a goal no longer matters or just needs a different approach? Like,
Oh,
say your
that's
priorities have sort of changed or situation has changed.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, my first thought is to use that 5 why exercise where you ask yourself 5 times why. So, for example, if your goal is around being healthy, why is it important to you to be healthy? So I feel better about me. Why is it important to you to feel better about you? So I'm a good example for my children, etc., etc. And you ask that why 5 times. If you feel like you can't complete that exercise, that might suggest that maybe it's not that important to you. I think the other thing is if you're not excited by your goal anymore, Like if deep down it doesn't actually matter to you, then that could also be a sign that maybe it's not the right goal. Maybe it's just a slight little detour, another path. It doesn't mean you have to give up on the thing altogether. It may just need a little bit of refinement to make it more exciting for you.
True. Great. Thank you. What about if like if you've been working towards a goal, like again, say for example, a house in 5 years, and you've been working towards a goal and taking those steps and stuff, and then it changes, like something changes and it's out of your control. How do you sort of uh kind of how do you sort of do you have any tips for sort of how to deal with that feeling of like feeling a bit defeated, like
Ah,
even though you still want to achieve that, but it may not be possible anymore. So how do you sort of rectify that?
yeah, that's such a good question. And that happens all the time because I think we're given this impression that the journey to success is smooth and straight. And I can't remember if I've ever shared this in one of the webinars for Ignite before, but there's this Olympian that was once asked, you know, what do you do when you feel like you're sucking at your training? And she said, well, actually, I expect to suck some of the time, that when you're chasing a big goal, a third of the time you're going to feel like you're a hero, that you're nailing it. Things are just going to be perfect. Another third of the time, things are going to be a bit average, you know, but they're okay. And a third of the time, it's just going to be miserable. You're not going to be performing the way you want to perform. But
Mm,
when you have that ratio, it means that the goal that you have is about the right level of challenge for you. So there's
mm,
that to know that it's not going to always be easy. A lot of the time, well, a third of the time, it's going to be hard. But also, what I like to do is I keep a record of my little triumphs, my wins. And whenever I feel down like I'm not getting to where I want to be, I like to reflect back on all the things I've already achieved. So, sure, I may not be in the place I want to be yet, but hey, I have done all this other stuff, which is getting me there. It just takes some time, but it, it's tough, it's miserable. We all want to achieve quicker than what we usually do, but then when we do achieve it, it's always quicker than we think as well.
mm.
Time is funny.
Great answer. Thank you. Someone has asked, or someone has said, I really want to achieve a goal, but I've failed so many times. Do you have any ideas on how to reframe this?
Yeah, I love that. And that again is really, really common. I think if you've set goals before and you feel like you failed, often it's the way the goals are set. So hopefully today's webinar will help. You'll be able to look back at the goal that you set previously and think, oh, maybe no, it was too rigid. It wasn't, I didn't have that wiggle room, or maybe it wasn't specific enough. But also, maybe it's just that the goal was too big. And can you think of a smaller goal that will take you towards that bigger goal, but just make it a little bit smaller and achieve that so that you then feel motivated to keep going? And I
Mm,
guess the funny thing is that we often think that once we reach this goal, that life is going to be amazing. But
mm,
often we get there, and yes, it's fantastic to achieve our goals, but actually, the joy, the thing that gives human beings pleasure, isn't the achievement part. It's the working towards the thing. There's this concept called the arrival fallacy. It's like when you're walking up a hill and you're waiting to get to the top. You get to the top, admire the view, it's beautiful, and then you turn around and you walk back down. And it's not, life goes on. It's great to
mm.
achieve, but then it's like, well, what's the next hill you're going to climb?
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
enjoy the journey, kind of.
Great answer. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Um, I maybe have one more. How can you sort of reset when you've fallen off the wagon without sort of giving up entirely?
Yeah, again, thank you for that good question because this happens to all of us, like me, you, everyone, it happens to all of us. I love the reframing where you just add in the word yet. So whatever that thing is, add in the word yet. And again, if you can break it down into a smaller goal, do that. But just keep reminding yourself that you are making progress. Think about how far you've come. Look back at that staircase. When you started walking up those stairs, you thought you'd never get there, and yet you're already up to the fifth flight. Look back, see how far you've come, and just add in that word yet.
Hmm, another great answer. Thank you, Josie.
You're welcome.
What is the max you would recommend for a long-term goal? I guess max time frame. Like,
Mm. Yeah, I don't think there's any hard or fast rules. I think it's going to be an individual thing depending on, what works best for you. It's like to use a sporting analogy because I'm a runner, some people prefer sprints, some people prefer kind of mid-range distance around 10Ks, and some people prefer endurance events. So if you're the sort of person that likes to set long range goals, which could be like 5 years or 10 years, and if that works for you, that's great. But I would encourage you to have shorter milestones as well so that you can feel like you're achieving. Because if you just have this 10-year plan, which is great to have, but you don't have those markers along the way, well, it's like a really long road trip on a windy road with no toilet breaks. It's just not very pleasant at all. You want to give yourself time to get out, stretch your legs, and to look at how far you've come.
Great, great answer. Cool. And any other strategies other than SMART goals that you can recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, SMART goals have been around for ages. I think the main thing is being able to visualize what success looks like. I'm a big believer that when you can really describe and articulate what that success looks like, then it makes it easier to come true. I know a couple of months ago I did a presentation, a webinar on the power of visualization. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to check it out. But when you are able to visualize what it is that you want, you actually go out looking for opportunities that support that definition of success. So the more you can articulate what success looks like for your goal, the easier it is. So if that's an easier framework to work with, just what does success look like? Forget about the acronym of SMART, just focus on definition of success.
That's awesome. Great. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, we can maybe close us off with a karakia.
Absolutely. Let me bring up the slides again. Over to you, Marissa.
Oh, mate rongo, ka mohio, mate mohio, ka marama, te marama, ka mātou, mate mātou, ka ora. Through listening comes awareness, through awareness comes understanding, through understanding comes knowledge, through knowledge comes life and well-being. Kia ora. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for attending, and thank you so much, Josie. That was great, and some of those questions were awesome. Yeah, go well, everybody.